Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we proudly bring to you the paranormal podcast sensation that is sweeping the nation, hosted by Andrew and John. This is Sasquatchers! Hey everybody, this is Andrew. That's John, as the intro said. Today we have a cool episode, one that I wanted to have lined up as soon as we started the show. It's an area of interest for myself, and I know a lot of the people that we interact with are paranormal investigators, so I thought it would be a really cool episode to kind of reach out to the folks who make the equipment that we use out in the field. So today we have Rob from Ghost Gear lined up to have a conversation with and hopefully learn some things. And I'll just pass it over to him and he can tell us a little bit about himself.
Sure, thanks. I appreciate you guys having me on. And like Andrew said, I'm Rob with Ghost Gear, and I guess the best place to start is at the beginning. So back in 2017, maybe a year before that, I started tinkering, but it wasn't until 2018 that I had an actual device that I was happy with. What got me into it was a lifetime of paranormal occurrences. So I grew up in a haunted house. I lived there until I was 26. When I moved out, I had no more, haunting activity whatsoever. So it was attributed to that house. And then I went off to college and got my engineering degrees. So I've got a, curiosity of the paranormal along with the, engineering background. So that led me to start tinkering with some devices. And, my idea, and at least with Ghost Gear, is to find new ways to interact with spirits. There's a lot of people out there that are just making REM pod clones, and I didn't want to be a Me Too store, right? So I didn't want just to have all this stuff for the sake of having it. I wanted to use my own creativity and invent these new devices. So one of the early devices I came out with was called the REM puck, and it had EMF detection and Doppler radar sensing built into it, and it was a little music box. So I started off making music boxes. That's why, if you notice, a lot of the themes of all of my devices, there's music boxes, what they are.
Oh, cool.
And so from the REM puck, I'm pretty much sold out of those, but I evolved the design. That design became the Piccolo EMF music box. So much better EMF sensing. You can adjust the trigger sensitivity on that one. And then from there, I had been tinkering for a long time with what's now known as the Epic Box. I have a device where I'm able to read pretty much all the frequencies in an area. So that data logger was instrumental in helping me develop the Epic Box. So the Epic Box, if you don't know, is a response device. Yes, no. It is a way for spirits to communicate through that box very easily. I made it very simple for you as the user to use it and for the spirits to use it. A lot of people have sent in fantastic results, lots of really cool activity from that. And then I went on to create the Fantune, which is a play on Phantom. And it's a music box that uses Doppler radar. So it uses a Doppler radar module that goes inside of it. And any movement, I say it's 360, but mostly from the front of it is where it picks up a lot of the activity. And that's good for about 20 feet. So those are the three big items that I have and sell. I've got a few T-shirts and hats. Usually, if I'm on a situation where you have to pre-order the device, I usually give away a free hat with that. So keep an eye out for those deals. My personal history in the ghost house that I grew up in, that one was really interesting. It was very negative, and it was, I guess you'd call it a shapeshifter, right? Because it would present itself to my sister as a little boy with no legs. It would present itself to me as the classical gray alien. Believe I know everybody's saying, "Oh no, that's not a or a ghost. That was a alien abduction." No, because I was into alien abductions at the time, reading a lot about it. So I think it chose to show itself to me in that form. It showed itself to my dad as a shadow figure that would crawl around on the bedroom floor. So my dad worked afternoon, midnight shift. So he would come home and sleep most of the day. Um, but when he would wake up, he would see these shadows moving around. He made the room really dark, even though it was kind of daytime, you know. But he would see shadows moving around. So we all saw it differently, um, and it was very powerful. So it would move things. It would change the channel on the TV. Now, I think this was a long time ago, before Roku and before Fire Stick TV and all that. Where nowadays people can drive around and play with your TV with their remote. This
Right.
was a long time ago when we didn't really have those kind of remotes, but the TV channel, the channel on the TV would still change, um, and very often it would very often find laughter. It would immediately switch to a channel that somebody was laughing. It's kind of odd. There was an instance where I was in the bathroom getting ready to go out for the weekend, um, and I had MTV playing in the background. So that goes to show how long ago it was. That was back when MTV played music. Um, the channel changed. And I spoke aloud to the spirit. I said, change it back. I really like that song. And it did. It changed it back to MTV after it had changed it again. We didn't have any dogs. They were gone, passed away by that time. So it wasn't the dogs getting on the remotes or anything like that. And often it would change the channel while we were sitting in the living room with the remote, visible to us. Um, and so the house was very interesting. And nothing happened until we broke into the roof to build the dormer, the second story. That's when everything kind of got weird. And it started actually with the construction guys up there. They were constantly complaining to my parents that the kids were getting up there, me and my sister were getting up there and moving their tools, because when they would come back from break or whatever, their tool was not where they had left it. It might be clear across the working area on the other side where the guy hasn't even been over there working. So that's the way it started, and because I remember my sister and I getting angry with these guys lying on us because we didn't never went up there on that ladder
Right. Right.
to get up there. Um, but yet I think that was the beginning. They were seeing stuff move around up there, and then after the second story was completed, it kind of settled down and was very very active from there on out.
So with that's kind of in line with a lot of the theories behind how these start with construction or sudden change
Right.
in the home. So that lines up. So you didn't have any experiences prior to that. That's legitimately how it all started.
Yeah, we didn't have anything before that. So I was probably around 6 years old when they built the second story. And then, yeah, it was after that because that was when I finally had my own room, right? This was a small house to begin with. It was a two bedroom, right? And at the time, living there in a two bedroom was my mom and dad, my little sister and me, and my two half brothers. So sisters slept in the room with mom and dad, and all the boys got one room together. Um, so building that second story, we were really happy about that. So um, now we had three bedrooms, right? And then my two half brothers were old enough where they moved out. They moved down to Florida, and so they didn't really experience any of it because they were only there for maybe a year after the second story was built, and then we that's when we started seeing stuff. So I remember back to around 6 years old and beyond. Um, my sister, she was tormented by the little boy. He would be seen floating into her room he would be seen outside her window. Now she had the second story bedroom, and she would see this little face looking at her from outside. So nothing for him to stand on under that window.
Right.
So we're not sure what that was, but she would scream. My mom would come running and she'd say, "Did you see him? Did you see him?" You know, the little boy, he ran out of my room or flew out of my room because he didn't have legs and went down the stairs, which my mom was just coming up. And my mom said she didn't see anybody. Um, but she would, swear up and down that she saw that. And the same thing with my dad. Um, he would feel it crawl into the bed. So as he was laying there sleeping, he could feel. He thought it was my mom, and then he would roll over to talk to her or whatever, and there was nobody there.
So this wasn't always a friendly or casual experience. This kind of seems a little sinister, maybe.
Oh yeah, it
Yeah.
was. It's it. I think we got into a fight one night. So I'm laying in bed, and something wakens me up. I can't open my eyes. They're kind of like glued shut from all the sleep, and I can't open my eyes. But I feel something moving around on my bed, and I grab my pillow and I swing at it, and the pillow stops. Now I don't know what orientation I was at. I could have hit the wall. My bed was next to the wall, so I might have hit the wall and it stopped. But then later that night, that's when I saw the creature, I'll call it, come out of the wall. And then the next day, my back was full of bruises. When
Oh
I
wow.
came out of the shower, my mom was like, "What happened to you?" And they didn't hurt or anything. I didn't know what she was talking about. And I went, looked in the mirror, and yeah, my back was all bruised up.
That's kind of sounds. You said that after you moved out that it quit happening. Did your parents continue to live there after you moved
No,
out?
my dad retired and he bought a place down in Tennessee, and that's where they live now. And there was a transition period for about a year and a half where they were coming and going and staying at both places as the house was being built in Tennessee. Yeah, they would go down, stay at a part or a hotel and watch the work site for a while. My dad's kind of like that. He doesn't trust everybody. Um, so I would have the house to myself. And man, you talking about some weird shit happening when I'm by myself. I was sitting in the living room in the recliner, which faced the TV, which I could see the hallway out into the hallway. And I saw zoom, zoom, two little white doggies take off running and go upstairs. Well, our dogs, they were alive at the time. They're not allowed upstairs because the upstairs was carpeted, downstairs wasn't. So I got up to go get them, and I got about halfway up the stairs, and I remembered that the dogs aren't there. They're with mom and dad down in Tennessee. So I'm like, well, what the hell did I just see? Because I thought I saw the two dogs run through there. So I went upstairs to kind of look around, and this was in the middle of the day, absolutely in the middle of the day. So people think you got to go ghost hunting at nighttime. That's false.
That's
We
something I've
had
been
so
learning with
much
all of these
activity during the day.
conversations.
What's that?
No, I was just saying that's something that I've been learning with all of these conversations is I'm actually surprised by how many people describe daytime activity.
Yeah, yeah. I would say it was just as strong during the day as it was at night. At night, it would do what it could to keep us awake. Pounding on the walls. I would hear my name. My childhood name was Bobby. My name's Robert. So I would be laying in bed and I would hear Bobby, 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 just whispered in my ear over and over again. And it would keep me awake. And, my sister, she reported hearing her name whispered in her ear. And so it would do a knock on the walls. One really cool thing that happened, it wasn't cool at the time, scared me to death, but um, I was laying in bed, middle of the day, taking a nap, young teenager taking a nap middle of the day, and I hear this chink, 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 chink. It sounds like metal hitting, metal. And I raise up to look around, and I see that the change is dropping off my shelf. Um, I'm also dating myself because no one carries around money anymore. But change was dropping off the shelf, and I was like, "What the hell?" So I got up and got closer to it, and there was a graduation doll my cousin had made for me because she was into ceramics, and it had a square base, and that sucker was turning very slowly, and the corners of it was pushing on that change and popping it out to make it drop. And I very quickly took that thing outside, and it met its demise between me, a cinder block, and a hammer.
Yeah, that's probably the reaction that I would have in that scenario as well. So do you think that maybe there was more than one of these things, or do you just think it's just that one shapeshifter that just took different
I
forms?
believe that there was just the one. Um, I never put any thought into it being more than one, but it could have. I mean, that's very possible. We didn't investigate our house, at that time. I mean, we kind of did, right? We actually took we friend had a baby monitor, so we put it upstairs in my sister's room because she was getting some activity up there and she wouldn't go up there for a couple of days. So we put it up there and we brought the monitor down and turned it up, and I think I was playing video games or something, and you could hear murmuring, chatting, like voices talking coming through that baby monitor. And this was a time before the internet, so some people were like, "Oh, somebody just hacked your baby monitor." No, this is kind of before that was even a thing, and baby monitors weren't connected to the internet because the internet didn't exist. Um, so that kind of leads into what you're saying. Maybe there's more than one, since we heard the multiple voices coming through that thing.
Yeah, I mean, just I'm no expert, and any opinion I have is just based on these conversations that I've been having with people on this show, and the amount of information that I've been absorbing over the last couple of months. It wouldn't surprise me if what you had was actually like some kind of like deep infestation that was awoken with that construction. And from
Yeah.
what you said, with not experiencing any activity after that, um, it seems like it might have just been that the house itself was infested. But one thing that I thought was interesting was you said that you were super into aliens and stuff, so you thought that it presented itself to you like that. Do
Mhm.
you have any guess or idea why it chose to take that form of a legless boy to harass your sister?
I don't know why the legless boy. Um, of the two of us, I was probably more into the horror stuff than she. Like, I wanted to be a special effects makeup artist when I was a kid, right? So I had the horror magazines and all that stuff.
Right.
So I was kind of a prime candidate for a ghost to, I guess, come after. But I don't know why. Yeah, the boy with no legs for my sister. Um, you know, we know that most of the time, if not all of the time, when it's a little child spirit, it's not actually a child, right? So it's just trying to get you to accept it. So I think for me, getting me to try and accept it was to show itself as an alien, because I was, reading all the books on alien abduction, and for her, maybe the child would bring sympathy.
Okay. Yeah, that
I
makes
don't
sense.
know.
Yeah, fair guess, I think. Um, so once all this stuff started, did you immediately start to think, one day I'm going to engineer something to figure out what's going on, or was that something that kind of came later?
No, that came totally later. That came about after, so being an engineer, one of the things that you always hear that young engineers took everything apart when they were little and put it back together. Well, yes, I did that, but most of the time it didn't work after I put it back together. So, um, but I took it apart and figured out how things worked. But that part of it came when, you know, I used the basic stuff early on. So when I used to do my residentials, I mostly just did a camcorder and audio at the time, and I would just dictate to the audio what was going on, to mostly record it. And it wasn't until I started seeing a lot of, quite frankly, garbage crap that's being pushed as for ghost hunters, like 99% of it really is just a cloned REM pod that they're using Junior Thurman from Amazon, stick it in a bear and call it something cool and sell it for $200.
For anyone that
Uh,
might not know what a REM pod is, can you just describe it real quick?
yeah, a REM pod was invented by Gary Galka, and it is a proximity sensor. It looks for conductive material, and whenever conductive material gets around it, that affects the field that it generates, and it will alarm. The stronger the conductive material is, or closer to the antenna, the louder and faster the lights will blink. Um, it is essentially just a Junior Thurman. So a Thurman was built by a Russian guy in the 1920s and 30s. It's an instrument that you don't touch. Um, it was made famous in Star Trek. So if you listen to
Oh
the Star
yeah,
Trek
okay.
theme song, that is a Thurman that they used to create that. So there's a Junior Thurman, which doesn't have the volume side of it. It only has the pitch. A full German or Thurman has a volume and pitch. So as you move your hands, both hands, one's affecting pitch, the other one's affecting volume. Um, this Junior Thurman is fixed volume, and all you're doing is adjusting the pitch. So what you can do is you can buy those. They're like $20. Stick it in a can or whatever you want to stick it in, and you've got your own REM pod. Now it's not exactly the same as the REM pod. It won't have the temperature deviation and all that, but for the money, it's close enough. So that's why you see a lot of people selling those on Facebook for obscene amounts of money, like $200. And then the other thing that's out there is the PIR sensors. Those are overdone, in my opinion. So when I saw all this, my engineering side kicked in, and I was like, man, there can be a better way than just cloning what other people have already made. So I set forth with a lot of ideas. I made a lot of project boxes. That's basically components, electronic components, and I stick it in a cardboard box, and that's kind of my device for a while. And then I would go and investigate a lot of residentials, some public hauntings. I don't really do a lot of those because all my information gets contaminated so easily by the various people that are there. So I prefer to go on solo, or just me and a close buddy or something. And I tested all of these out there, tweaked them, fine tuned them, and so that's where like the Piccolo EMF music box came out of, one of those little project boxes, and the same with the Epic box, the response device. So a lot of that came well after living in Michigan, and after getting my degree in the engineering side of things. It was really what prompted me was I just felt like there could be a better way to make better devices, new and unique devices, um, that other people are not doing, and that's what started Ghost Gear.
Very cool. Yeah. I agree that so much of what you see is sensationalized. I mean, I hate to phrase it like that, but I mean, television is produced for a reason. And
Yep.
one of the things, for taps at least, when Ghost Hunters first started, a lot of it was disproven hauntings. I would say at least 50 to 70% of that show in the beginning was disproven hauntings, and they would walk in and do everything they could to discredit what was happening or find a reason for it.
Hmm.
And I don't know, at some point there in the mid 2000s, 2010 ish, it seems like every single show, them included, they're going in, and it's just fantastic how every single thing is just suddenly a haunting, and they're not looking at pipes anymore or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's good that people like yourself are out there, engineering something that is of a better quality. Do you think with your stuff, um, the way they operate differently, is it sensational proof? Like, what I mean by that is, if somebody took that equipment and tried to create or emphasize something, would
Mhm.
that maybe kind of not allow them to with the way your stuff operates?
Um, so I don't think it's since I, I I do think that if it if I could get them on a TV show, especially the Epic Box, would probably take off. Like a lot of these other devices, like the REM pods and what have you. Um, the problem is, and I don't know if everybody understands this, but these TV shows, those are paid product placements. Okay, if you notice, Ghost Adventures no longer plays with the Ovilus. Okay, that's because Bill Chappell is retiring and he's no longer paying for product placement on that show. He's sold the rights to the Ovilus to Ghost Stop. So now maybe Ghost Stop might, rekindle that flame with Ghost Adventures. But right now, Ghost Adventures is being paid by Paranologies, and they're really pumping the Tune or whatever it is, that little basically spirit box, a round one. Um,
Okay, so that's
so
why the
that
spirit
is
box
kind
is
of the
everywhere now.
problem, is they want money for your device to be shown on air. And
Okay.
I had one very small TV show once, 1,500 per episode, with no guarantee that it would make the final cut. So I can only imagine what something like Ghost Adventures would cost.
Wow. That was completely over my head for all these years until you just mentioned it. I never even considered something like that might have been occurring. That's kind of that's an incredible revelation. I didn't expect to have.
Yeah.
So
There,
that makes total sense, though.
and if they don't, the other side of it is maybe they really love your device and they get a hold of it. They cover it in gaffer's tape so nobody can make out what it is, and then they use it. Um, and then they don't, like, there's no reciprocation. So if I give out a device to an influencer, there's return on investment expected, right? So I could either sell the device for $175, or I could give it to an influencer for free. But I would expect to at least get $175 worth of, airtime or showtime to get my money back, right? So if somebody's going to put gaffer's tape all over it and then use it on their TV show where nobody can see what it is, then I get nothing in return, right? So I've got to be
Right.
very careful who I work with, and make sure that who I'm working with I trust, to not do that.
Do you find
And
that
some have,
influence?
some have been like, oh no, we won't do that, and then I see it on their channel and it's got gaffer's tape all over it. Gaffer's tape is a used by gaffers in the audio industry. It's a very strong tape, but when you remove it, it doesn't leave any residue, and it's flat black. Um, so they use gaffer's tape quite a bit on stuff like that, on devices.
Right. Yeah. Do you do you think influencers or YouTubers are easier to work with or
Yes.
less sensational, I guess, than what you'd see on Travel Channel or Discovery or whatever has the paranormal show on at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a lot easier to work with. They are really happy to work with, an inventor like myself. They don't, for the most part, put gaffer's tape on them. They show it, they use it. Like the Foreman brothers, they use the Epic Box almost every episode, right? They've been a great partner. They have, their recordings are really phenomenal. They've captured really great evidence. Um, and they're always reaching out to me asking me what else do I got, right? And then you put that against the TV shows, and they're like, who are you, why do we want to talk to you, and if you want to talk, you got to grease the wheel. So I stick with, and I can really talk with more influencers. They're easier to get a hold of as well on YouTube and TikTok than the TV show folks. They're too well protected to get a hold of. The producers, they just want to talk money. They don't care about anything else. So TV shows are interesting, but I do like working with the influencers on YouTube and TikTok.
Yeah, very cool. I have found myself leaning a lot heavier towards that direction, even with my interactions for this podcast too. Like as cool as it would be to, have like the Rolling Stones of paranormal and like Josh Gates or something on the other end of my
Right.
camera. I don't find a lot of the television side even remotely interesting anymore. Like it's almost like with influencers and YouTube, the paranormal community is a bit Wild West right now. It's everything's kind of happening in every direction, and every other day there's a new collaboration or something. So I think
Right.
it's a lot more exciting, and people are more willing to work together. And one thing that I've learned since doing this is how muddy the waters are with the paranormal community. Like, there's a lot of people that will just trample right over you just to kind of fall into that TV side of things.
Oh yeah.
S- So that's another revelation that I've had through all of this that I wasn't kind of expecting because outside of if you're on Twitter and you're seeing who Zach Baggins is feuding with that week, you don't really ever really see a lot of that side of it because it is so protected. And then you start talking to people and you're seeing like Nick Groff has this to say, and the
Yeah.
Taps dudes go in different directions. It's just kind of that would be a rough industry to try to get into the way that you've found yourself involved with, considering all of those things in place. But what I really like is that you're coming at it from a scientific point of view. And I just have a question.
Yeah.
I asked an exorcist this question last week. So I wanted to get your take as somebody who has degrees, is building this stuff with his hands. Um, First of all, do you adhere to the idea that something like a Ouija board is a conduit or portal to something beyond? Because I guess that would kind of dictate where the question goes.
Yeah. I don't know with the Ouija board. I would expect the spirit may try to communicate through it, to the people, but there's so many variables in that it's hard to say, right? You've got everyone has their fingers on it.
All right.
Um, Someone may be more motivated than others. Um, so you don't, and then when I've seen one method is where you blindfold yourself and it's just one person and they're
Yeah.
moving it, but they're still moving it, right? So
Right.
the letters they land on will be random, and then people sometimes suggestion, is very powerful. So sometimes out of a non-event, I find investigators will still try to find some purpose in it, you know. And sometimes you just got to say that's noise in the data, right? So even on a perfect electronic robotic system, you still get noise in the data, and you've got to learn to discern that noise and kick it aside and look at the real values. Um, so I think that goes true with the investigators, with either using a Ouija board or even the Epic box. You need to figure out what is noise and what is the real deal. And I mean, really, it just takes experience for that, right? So especially on a Ouija board, so you've got to use a Ouija board a lot, I would think, in order to discern the noise from actual ghost spirit interaction.
So the spirit box or the boxes that you create just by virtue of existing isn't a portal as well to the unknown or to invite like something evil to you.
Yeah, I think any time that we try to contact the other side, some sort of portal, if they decide they want to contact us, so we still don't know all the physics behind the spirit world, But I think when you open communication with a spirit, that's a portal, and it should be treated with respect and you know closed properly. I see a lot of people do Ouija board stuff and never close it. They do seances, they don't close it. Um, I witnessed a ritual being done and there was no closure in the ritual, and I'm like, that one you should probably read all the instructions on before you go fooling with that. But um, yeah, I just think that in general, anytime you reach out to a spirit, some caution needs to be had.
Okay, and that's a good take too, because, like I said, we talked to a variety of people. We've had several exorcists who have, both even had a slightly varying opinions on some things, just in their own field. So I always kind of harken back to maybe questions that we may have had answered by other people, because the show's had like a weird synchronicity every single episode. Somehow, some way, somebody mentions a point or a topic that was made prior. So I was kind of fishing for that right now. But um, how do you separate the EMF readings from something that is man-made or in nature versus what you're picking up from a would-be spirit?
Yep. So EMF has two components to it. It has amplitude or power, and it has speed or frequency. Right. So, and they're not related to each other. High frequency does not mean high power or low power, because you can have both. You can have a low power, high frequency, or low high power frequency as well. So, what you have to look at first is the frequencies. So we know all the man-made frequencies, right? We know all the radio frequencies. We know 60 hertz. We know the Roomba frequencies. So I forget what it's called, but it's we'll call it the Family Frequency Act. And that's a range of frequencies that you're allowed to operate in without needing any kind of special government, you know, licenses or whatever. So we know what those frequencies are, microwaves. So what you can do is take all those frequencies and just block them out. And then you're left with, I'll say, less man-made interference, because you can never really get rid of all of it, because there are some overlaps. Now, natural EMF, that would fall under the Earth's magnetic field, and that's actually not an EMF. That is a permanent magnet, like the magnets that go on your refrigerator. So a permanent magnet just has a straight line. That's its magnitude. So if you've got EMF, it bounces up and down, a sine wave, right? A permanent magnet is like DC. It's just flat. It's just always there. Now you can test this by taking your K2 meter and putting it up to your refrigerator magnet, and you should get no reading. You might get a pop at the beginning as you move the magnet, but once you hold it still, you'll get no reading. Now, if you move that magnet, you're simulating alternating current. So you're simulating it. And that's what an EM pump is. It's a magnet that's moving. And it pumps out, it generates EMF and pumps that out. So that's what we do with all of our devices, is we look at certain frequencies and we block those out to kind of filter a lot of the man-made stuff. That's why I'll get a lot of folks, they'll say, hey, this doesn't work like my K2, or it's not working like my Mel meter. And I'm like, yeah, it's because I blocked out a lot of stuff. Not a lot, but a fair amount of man-made EMF. Those two devices will pick it up. Mine will not. So it's more or less prone to false positives than the other devices are. And it is a active sensing, which is pretty cool. So the Mel meter is active sensing, my device is active, and the tri-field is active. Well, the K2 uses passive sensing, which basically means that the EMF has to generate the power through the coil that it uses. It uses a coplanar loop as an antenna. So it has to generate energy through those little loops. whereas a active sensor actually sends voltage to the sensor. The sensor powers up and actually builds a little EMF bubble around it. And whenever external EMF comes in and changes that EMF, we can document that. And that's why we're able to say, okay, that's 4 milligauss of EMF or 7 milligauss because of the change.
Okay,
that was probably way more than what you really were going for.
No, that's okay. I like the science aspect of it. I could sit down and listen to lectures and stuff, and I like to absorb that information. And I think that's honestly better for a listener who might be interested in your product too, to hear you say that versus the simple answer that might not be as informative.
Right.
But so another question. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, back a while back, you mentioned Doppler radar
Yes.
on the devices. So, can you explain the purpose in these instances for the Doppler radar? And obviously, Doppler radar pings and bounces back, and that's how it picks up readings. But so this Doppler radar can pick up on entities and spirits. Is that what the purpose of it is?
That's the idea. So Doppler radar is a very powerful EMF. It generates electromagnetic field, and it will actually go through solid objects that are not metallic. If they're metallic, they'll just ricochet off it. But if they're like a door or a wood door, not a metal door, but a wood door, you can put these up next to it and they will pick up what's on the other side. So a little word of caution there when you're using these. You know, if you've got investigators in the room next to you, there's a chance they could be setting it off. Doppler radar, you're right, it sends out a signal and then it looks for a bounce back. And then when it sees that bounce back change, it knows there's movement. How it works in the spirit world be the same as how any other device works, right? We really don't know. But what we do know is when a spirit wants to communicate with you, they seem to latch onto a device. And whatever that device is measuring, they're able to manipulate it somehow. I've seen that. We went into this house in Tennessee, and every night we were there for 7 days investigating this residential case. And every night they seemed to latch onto a different device, and they would work because this is the first time they've seen any of this, right? So no one's been in there before. The house was boarded up for 10 years. The lady that lived in it died. It got boarded up. 10 years passed. New owners. They're remodeling the house. So there you go again, another remodeling. So with all of that going on there, with them attaching to different devices, that's the first time I've seen that. Right. Usually they'll attach to whatever is the easiest for them to use, but they were specifically using different devices. And I had the Fantune clone with me there as well, downstairs. And whenever we would hear shuffling, the Fantune would go off, or the early version of the Fantune would go off quite a bit. So I know, and that's when we were both upstairs. No one was downstairs. So I know that it can pick them up, but how exactly? Honestly, I don't know how exactly, because it's the same way with PIR, passive infrared. So it being passive, infrared, active infrared would send out infrared light, and it would look for that reflection back. Okay, what passive does is it requires you to generate the infrared and send it to the sensor, because the sensor is not active. So you have a heat signature, right? Dogs, cats have a heat signature. When you walk into a room, it sees that heat signature, it's moving, it throws the alarm that something in there is moving, right? How does that one work with spirits? So unless they can somehow generate their own or control the temperature around them that the passive infrared can see, that's the only way that they would be able to pick that up. So I go around with a lot of different types of sensors and how they work with ghosts and spirits, and I don't exactly know, how they do it, but I just know that they do it somehow.
Sure. Yeah. I guess if we knew exactly, it wouldn't be paranormal, right?
Right.
I could make the best ghost hunting device if I knew exactly.
Well, I know one of the, speaking of like radar and infrared and stuff like that, one of the more popular devices I've seen, especially like Zach Baggins uses this a lot, is the LiDAR, the three-dimensional LiDAR, where they like, it's got the lines on the screen. It tries to put a body together. I don't really have an opinion on that use, at least on the television shows. I don't know if influencers are using that technology a lot or if that's just kind of a television thing. Just wanted to see what your opinion on that was.
Yeah, that seems to be. So I see it, the SLS and XLS on television and in public ghost hunts. I don't see it much on the YouTube influencers. I don't see them using it as much. I don't know if it's because they've got to keep their audience, tuned in a little. They're burdened with that versus a TV show. TV show, you sit down, you commit to it, you got your popcorn, you're relaxed, you're watching it. Whereas a YouTuber, somebody watching YouTube, they might get to the point where like, I don't like this. Boom, they're gone. Right, they bounce. So maybe they have found that, and I'm just thinking out loud, spitballing here, that running around with an SLS that's not doing anything all night isn't a best use of their time, to try and keep their viewership up.
Yeah,
That's just me spitballing some ideas.
That's an intelligent, fair point.
Yeah.
Kind of along the lines of what you guys were talking about, versus TV versus influencers and stuff. Another thing that seems to be real popular right now, and this is years after its original purpose was intended to be anyway, is the what was the motion sensor from the Xbox again?
Yeah.
Is that the same technology
as the XLS? The XLS uses a higher powered LiDAR sensor.
So the people who are using the Xbox camera from a few years ago are essentially operating something that could then yield some kind of result, and it's not. I thought it was frivolous when I had heard about it.
Yeah, I question it because I know so I read up on it, and when they were creating the device, they trained the AI model, to find humans. That was its goal. So its goal is to always find a human, and it's like when you're a hammer, everything you see is a nail, right? So that's what it's doing. It's a hammer, and it's looking for some humans, and it will try to put them in there. So, knowing that, I kind of question the SLS or XLS. But on the flip side, I've seen some remarkable stuff where people will be like, "Hey, can you wave at me with your left hand?" And it'll, wave. And I'm like, that kind of stuff's like, okay, what do I do with this information? Right? Could it be fake? Not that the investigator's faking it, but I mean that the camera is just picking up random noise and strung together a human. But when it waves, when they ask it to, that's the part that kind of leaves me with questions.
Yeah, that's a much harder control setting to try to occupy. Is there anything that you would be able to do with your technology, with the increase and advent of artificial technology? Like, will AI help in the paranormal field moving
I think
forward?
it could in video, and by that, and maybe even audio. So, you think about the hours and hours that you recorded. So you got 3 cameras, you investigate for 6 hours. That's a lot of camera time to be watching, right? To go back and review. I think AI could do that for us, and it could go frame by frame and look for anomalies. It could find shadow people where we miss it, right? It could find different things that are out there, doors opening, depending on how the AI model is trained, it could do all that. And the same thing with EVPs. It might be able to go through and catch an EVP that we missed. Now, as far as, on the spot AI, that one kind of worries me a little bit, because as soon as you say, I've got a device that uses AI, people are going to question it and say, well, were your intentions true? Or did you program a little something in there to edge out your competitor? Right. So
Right.
that's going to be the problem. So we've got a lot of people now that are getting into this AIoT, and you can buy, what do they call them? Expansion boards with screens on them. So basically they're making their own obelisk, right? The problem with those is they have built-in speech recognition, and they're offline speech recognition, which means it doesn't have to be connected to the internet to recognize speech. And of course, the problem there is, well, is it recognizing my questions and formulating an answer? Right. So that's very possible. So, that's why I personally stay away from those devices. I get it. They're easy to program. You can very easily write software and make your own obelisk clone by using them. But the fact that, they have offline speech recognition, GPS built into them, people are always going to question that. At least they should, But then you got people out there that don't question anything. They just take it all for face
This
value.
Facebook feeds are like, I'm almost even Twitter now that has kind of taken over that. But yeah, I'm super into AI. I play with AI every day. And the day singularity happens and it destroys us, I might think differently. But part of our Facebook group even is every day I come in and I have like a new AI thing that I've been playing with and share it. The AI that I really like doing is art and image creation, though, because I have a background in graphics design. So I kind of play with AI to see how far it's come as far as that goes. But
yeah, my background here is AI generated.
Yeah, it's a nice looking background too. It
Thank
almost
you.
looks
I
like
did
a
that all
backdrop.
myself.
I didn't notice, but now that I'm looking at it, I can tell.
Yeah, if you look closely, you can tell. Some of the pumpkins are a little funky.
Yeah, they do look a little better than the ones that are still sitting on my porch right now. But we're kind of hitting that hour mark. That's usually when we like to let people go. And this is one of our rare daytime recordings. I think I've interrupted both of your work days right now. So we can go ahead, and what I want to do, I do it for everybody, is I want to allow you the floor. Go ahead and promote, advertise anything that you have going on. And when you're done with that, we can hit the outro. Stick around for a second so that when the recording ends, everything finalizes, and then we don't lose any of this audio or video that we've been recording. And the floor is yours. Go ahead and let everybody know where they can get your stuff.
Yeah, so you can pick up any of the Ghost Gear products from our website, which is www.ghostgeartech.com. That's ghostgeartech.com. I've got the Epic Box up and available right now. That is our response device with the yes and no. I've got Piccolo on pre-order, and then I've got the Fantunes, which are the Doppler radar motion sensing. Those are on back order for December and quickly selling out. So I would recommend, if you're interested in one, get on that waiting list. A lot of people don't like to pre-order, but I've been fortunate enough to where I sell out every month ahead. So November was sold out back in October. December will probably sell out here in the middle of November, and then in December, I'll start taking orders for January. So you really do need to get in on the waiting list for those, because they do sell fast. We the Piccolo is the EMF music box, so that will detect EMF and play music. The Fantune, again, that's the Doppler radar. And then the Epic box, which is gaining in popularity, which I'm very happy about. That one is the response device where you can ask yes and no questions. And again, you can get all of that at ghostgeartech.com.
All right. Yeah, definitely check it out. Rob's a cool guy. And, taking the time to come onto the show and explain scientifically how he engineered everything, I think is, that puts him a cut above everybody else, because nobody else accepted this invitation. And, that level of, I'm not going to say marketing, because while it is marketing, that's also demonstrating how you, a user, can operate this stuff. It doesn't happen often. That you don't have to buy a box and read a direction. You can come back to this podcast, and I want to again thank you for your time. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll hit this obnoxious outro button and annoy everybody. If you like the show, please like, follow, share, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us. Thanks for squatching.
Thanks for squatching.